Hello, it's nice to see you again. This is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and today we are talking about the question, and we'll be answering the question in many ways. And the question is my spiritual journey supposed to be easy? Is my spiritual journey supposed to be easy? In this case, is your spiritual journey supposed to be easy? So we have two people on currently. I would love to hear who's here. If you would or could go into the chat and say hello, it would be great to know that you're here. So the intention of this particular playlist, spiritual dilemmas, is the intention is to bring you some ideas and thoughts and experiences, mine and hopefully yours, if you're sharing with me, um, your experiences that cultivate an awareness of what it's really like to be in this human experience as a spiritual being, and integrating the spirit human dilemmas, the things that happen in us as we're in the process of being human. We start this process before we even get into our bodies, into our mama's bodies, before we even come into our little zygotes and fetuses. We begin that process a long time ago, I think, and that's what I believe. And if you believe something different, I would love to hear what you believe. Hi, Fred. I can't believe you guys are here. Thank you. Um, so the more that we can talk about, okay, there's this spiritual part of myself, or this part that is inside this physical body, and there's this part of me that has an ego, or the part that says, here's how I'm supposed to look, or how I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do. And then this other part that doesn't show up that way, is different. We come up against dilemmas, and all of this is part of our spiritual journey or spiritual adventure. So I say life is a spiritual journey. And as I mentioned last week and every week, this is spiritual journey. And we also, that means that everything that we come across as part of this spiritual journey is and can be a spiritual practice. It gives us the opportunity to learn, to see who we are, to see how we be in the world with conflict or confusion or committing. The word is conflicting commitments. I have a commitment to cultivate myself as a human being into a wiser, more mature person. And at the same time, there's a part of me that wants to not be responsible for anything I do. I don't want to be responsible for other people. I don't want to be responsible, at least today, I don't want to be responsible. And how do we be with both those parts? The part that says I want to grow up and I want to be mature and I want to cultivate myself and serve the world in a good way. And then there's the part that says, but don't make me responsible if I don't show up. So that's all part of this conversation in terms of spiritual dilemmas, is we are this human being, this physicality. We are what's inside. We experience these thoughts. We experience this body. We experience our emotions. And then there's more, the witness that says, is that true? Is that really true? And so we're listening to so many parts of ourselves, and it seems to get so complicated that we just kind of throw everything out. We throw the baby out with the bathwater. We go, this is just too much, too many complications, not going there. So to answer the question, is my spiritual journey supposed to be easy? Bottom line is no. And sometimes we're given the idea it's supposed to be easy. If you go to, for me, and for many people who are brought up in particular religions, if you go to church and if you say your prayers and if you go to confession and if you do A, B, C, and D, your life is going to be easy. It's going to be great. And you're not going to have to struggle. But the truth is that because we are in these human beings and we come up against all kinds of challenges, many of which we were not anticipating, then that creates conflict. And it's like, and we get pissed off. It's like, if I think that it's supposed to be easy because I'm doing all the right things and it's not easy, I'm pissed off and I'm not going to play. I don't care. A lot of people get pissed off at God. A lot of times, and I've heard this from many people, that when they were in the womb and or going through the birth canal, they just decided they didn't want to be there. Hi, Lisa. Nice to see you. Decided they didn't want to be on the planet. They wanted to back out of the whole plan, not going. And they had to they were struggling and they were birthed and now they're in this body and they're pissed off because and they're mad at God because they don't want to be here. And I've heard this quite often, and especially from people who are wanting to get ahead in their lives and get ahead in terms of having a fulfilling life and have fulfilling relationships, maybe be prosperous. And when we distinguish what's going on, there's this element of them that's pissed off at God. They might be pissed off at their parents too or other people, but God is part of that quite often. And in that, they say, hey, I'm not going forward because I'm not giving God what he wants. I'm laughing because I know that experience and I know, like I said, this is not, I'm not making this up. People feel this way. I'm not going to give God what he wants. So I'm not going to have a happy life, but because that's what God wants. And it's like, okay, whatever you want, that's what I'm here to help and support you to do. But as we begin to distinguish those conversations, distinguish those thoughts, it's quite often I see myself as a thinking partner. So as we're distinguishing those thoughts, people are going to come to a place of feeling grief and sadness and scared and powerless. They start to feel things, that emotional part of the self. And they begin to shift and change their relationship to their thought. I'm not going to give God what he wants. And then life can happen in a much more smoother way, in an easier way. It's looking at and observing and witnessing these thoughts and thought patterns that have been with us so long, we don't even know they're in there. And that's a great thing about having a life coach, a spiritual coach, a transformational coach, or a therapist or a spiritual guide, someone that can listen to your conversations, your internal dialogues in such a way they can help you move towards what you say you want. I'm always talking, and you've heard me say this before, if you've heard me before, is that there's 4 questions that are really important for each of us to be with. First question is, what do you want? And in terms of, is my journey, my spiritual journey supposed to be easy? What would make it easy is for you to get clear about what is it that you want from clearly being on a spiritual journey. We're on it anyway. You're on this journey. You're in the process of this human life. And this is a process. You're in it. You're in it. And you can get out, and can talk about that another time. But right now we're saying, if you're going to be authentically clear about why this journey, why are you on it? Let's take responsibility. Okay, I'm here, and here's why I'm on it, and here's what I want from it. Then we can get clear about our intentions. And we're on this journey for 2 reasons. One is to get something, and one is to let go of something or to not have it in our life. You want something to disappear. So I look over here, that's where my little notes are. So we're wanting something. It might be, I want to know God. One of my clients, I call her Carrie, she said, I want to know, I want to know and I want to see God in every person I meet. Now that was what she really wanted. And I thought that was beautiful. So maybe I want a sense of fulfillment. Maybe what I want, actually, one of the things I say is, I want to know the full potentiality of this being. I want to know what's possible within this human existence. So each of us has a knowing of that intention, though most of us don't spend much time thinking about that or talking about it. I mean, one of the things I want to bring to you is these opportunities through these chats and conversations and comments to say, here's what it's like to be me in this human spirit dilemma. Here's what I'm struck by. Here's where it sucks for me. Here's where I'm pissed off at God, why I'm pissed off at God. So when we're able to look at these things, we're able to get more clear, and that simplifies any journey. If you're going to go on a trip and you want to go to Florida, and you look in your suitcase and it's like full of winter clothes, this is not going to work. It's not going to work for you. And so you start thinking about this more clearly. What's my intention when I'm in Florida? Well, comfort, lightweight clothes, sunscreen, other things that need to go, hat, things that need to go, a scuba suit. So you got to take out the stuff that's not going to work. So what doesn't work? What do you want to disappear from that suitcase? What is it you want to disappear from your daily life that's not fun or not fulfilling, not contributing to your well-being or the well-being of others? I, for a long time, found myself in this state of dread and this state of angst. It's like, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to live this way. And so I started practicing letting go of those things. Stop thinking that, or if those things come up, be aware of what that is. But the intention had to get clear enough that I began to do the work. Now, this is a second. So the first part, one of the first things that makes a spiritual journey easy is the degree to which you are clear about your intentions of what you want and what you want to disappear from your life. So those things will set you on the path to say, okay, here's the beginning of my compass, my trajectory. I want to go to Florida. So that's the beginning of those kinds of focuses, the intention. So where I was going to go is the responsibility, and I said this before, 100% responsibility for what shows up in your life and how it shows up. So I say, I don't want to be grumpy during the day. And so I start to watch my thoughts and I go, oh, there's a grumpy thought. My dog needed to go out early. It's like, oh, and I get all grumpy, or it's too hot outside, or whatever it is. And I go, oh, it makes me grumpy. And it's like, it doesn't make me grumpy. I choose to be, I've learned to train myself to be grumpy. And if I want it to be something different, I need to start being responsible and accountable for my agreement to my intention to say, I want to give up this grumpiness. I want to actually have fun and playfulness. I want to look forward to my dog wanting to go outside, and I'm right there with her. I want to shift this as an intention. So the more that we can become accountable and responsible for our choices, when I see myself be grumpy, I go, I don't need to be grumpy there. There's no reason for me to be grumpy there. And so I could, at that point, begin to make a choice to be different. Maybe I can't do it 100% right away. Can't do it 100% right away. And that's another point, which is, okay, so we've got the intentions, we've got 100% responsibility. I'm going to go really quickly through these, but we can come back if you have things to say or questions to ask. I'm happy to come back to that. But the thing I was just going to say, I forgot. I'm going too fast. I'll come back to it though. The willingness to see, most of us, when we take on a spiritual practice or a spiritual journey, we have a specific outcome in mind. We might have an intention, but we want to be right about what we're doing and how we do it. We want to be in control. We don't want any surprises. We don't want any uncertainty. We don't want to get hit upside the head with a 2x4. We don't want any of that stuff that's going to knock us off. We want to be, our ego self says, I want to be in control and I want it my way. And when it's not, which it will not be, 99% of the time, it will not be the way you want it to be. Now we got to be with what is, as opposed to what we want it to be. And that's where the spiritual human dilemma journey really begins. When we begin to say, okay, this is not what I expected. This is what is. Life is what it is, not what I expected it to be. And that reality for so many of us is the beginning of this deconstruction of the intellectual and the ideas and the judgments and the perceptions of life. And our righteousness is really strong in some of us. And you might be one of those people that goes, oh, no, I'm not righteous at all. It's those people. But the judgment elements is where we are also stuck in our righteousness. When we're judging anybody for anything, including ourselves, there's a sense of righteousness there. And when we're in righteousness and control, we cannot. We are we're resisting the receiving of divine wisdom. We are, if I'm right about me, and when I was studying to be a marriage and family therapist, one of the quotes that was said a lot is, you can be right or you can be in relationship. So those of us who, I knew how to be in a relationship. I was a marriage and family therapist. I knew how to, or I knew better than, because I was raised by blah, blah, blah. And it's like all of that rightness didn't allow me to actually be in relationship with my husband or my partners or whoever I was, because I was not in openness. I was not open to receiving or listening or having this fluid relationship. I was right, and I wanted to make him like me because I was right. I was trying to control things. You might be different, but there's so many people, so many of us that want to control because we have a sense of security and stability when we have that. But when we have that rightness, we do not have an openness to being in relationship with anything, even Florida, other than from the perspective of this is what is. And so we can't explore, and we can't have an adventure. We can say we're being curious, but we're more like curious versus like, yeah, show me. I want to see it all. I want to experience it all. So the degree to which all of that points to is the degree of openness and allowing of the perfect, not the perfect, of the direct experience that we're having. Quite often we're trying to control the experience and not have the experience at all. So two things are happening. You are watching a video of me talking about experiencing spiritual journeys. Now, two things are happening. You are having a direct experience yourself of an experience while you're hearing me and listening to me and seeing me. You're having a direct experience. The degree to which you are aware of and conscious of your direct experience is the value of these videos. So often people are sitting on the sidelines watching other people and going, yeah, that's really interesting. Or, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by what you're saying. Or, oh, you're so different. I don't even understand what you're saying. But they're not willing to actually say, okay, I'm going to engage in my own direct experience. And it's a both and, in a sense. We're scared to have the direct experience of our humanness. And so we intellectualize, we spiritualize, we emotionalize, we ignore, distract, avoid, be in FaceTime, Facebook, whatever it is that keeps us from actually engaging in the world, when in fact we came here to engage in the world. We came here to have this human spiritual journey. But it's so scary because when we're on the playing field in the middle of the game, we feel like we might be out of control. We might feel powerless or hopeless or helpless. We don't like feeling that way. And so we stay up in the in the bleachers. We stay home. That when I sailed for quite a while in my life, and there was this thing called the armchair sailor. The armchair sailor, they have their boat in the mooring, or in the at the club, or wherever their boat is in the dock, waiting to go out. And when they bought the boat, it's like they had this idea of the big adventure, and they're sitting reading their magazines, reading the sailing magazines, the yachting magazines. Their boat's out there, and they rarely go out because it's too scary to have our personal experience. And so the resistance and the sitting back and I don't want to be responsible for what shows up in my life. It's like, excellent, good to know. And at the same time, people, yes, but I want to know, or yes, but I want to have, or yes, but I want to. It's like, yes, that's a conflicting commitment. I don't want the responsibility, and I don't want to be scared, and I don't want to be out of control. And I want this to be different. And that's that dilemma that we're in constantly, of I want more, and I'm scared to have more. And again, that's the beauty of having a coach or somebody that can be your thinking partner to go, yeah, isn't that interesting that you want more, but it's too scary. It's like, yeah, that's that's one of those elements that makes these journeys challenging as opposed to easy. Another piece that I was going to say earlier is we think that this is like a sprint. I know I did. It's like if I just read this book, it's going to change my life. And you, how many times have you heard that, right? The Secret or whatever. If you read this book, it'll change your life. And so people read the book anticipating it will change their life. And they're done and they go, huh, interesting. It's inspiring, but it's not, I'm not changed. Okay. Because there's a promise of the sprint. You know, you can do it through one book or one workshop or one retreat, and you'll have it all. And it doesn't happen. Rarely happens. It might lead to the next book, or it might lead to some revelations that you write down and go, wow, that's really interesting. That reminds me of this, or that reminds me of that. And you start to integrate for yourself what you're learning and what you're experiencing while you're learning that. When I was reading the Course in Miracles, it was pissing me off what it was saying, because it was telling me things I didn't want to hear, and it was making me responsible for what I didn't want to be responsible for. I literally threw that book across the room. Literally. That surprises me because it's like, you know, people say that, but I actually did it. I threw the book as like, fuck, excuse the expression. It's like, that is, I do not want to know that. And about 3 weeks later, I picked it up and went back and said, yeah, I got to face this, because my life sucks. My life is, I'm suffering. I'm alone and I'm mean and I'm mad. And I was a therapist. And I wasn't mean in my clients, but when I left those sessions, went back to home, I was not a happy person. And I didn't want that kind of life. I wanted a life of fulfillment and joy and playfulness and happiness. And, you know, much of what we're sharing now is much more fun than that. So thinking that it was going to be a sprint, thinking that if I just did this, my life would be getting better. We just have a little bird just came in right there, and he just left. How about that? That's kind of fun. So it's not a sprint. In fact, some parts of your spiritual journey may be a long time. Part of our spiritual journeys quite often are health issues, or those times in our lives where, for instance, through the process of aging, when our bodies aren't doing what we thought they would do or they used to do, we come up against those places again where we are at a loss of power, and it feels hopeless, and we don't know who we are because our identity was attached to something that isn't who that is right now. So quite often, cancer is a huge problem. Obesity is a huge problem. Heart disease, huge problem. And those are diseases, and I think cancer is more so. For some reason, we see it more as a victiming of us, as opposed to other things like heart disease, where we quite often are contributing to that, but we don't see how we contribute to our own development of illnesses. And we don't see how illnesses are actually, and disease are actually opportunities for spiritual development. And 99% of the people who have these diseases and come through them, they will say, hey, I learned so much about myself that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. Or they just grow themselves. They grow themselves into healing and wholeness again. So these places in our lives where we go, oh, I'm going to have a great life. It's just going to be easy. I'm going to, I'm going to get my education. I'm going to get a job and get my family, and everything's going to be fine. And I'm talking about myself here, and then just keep going. Well, that didn't happen. Lots of things happened. Lots of choices happened. And some of them were choices I didn't want to participate in. Other choices I did, but they influenced what happened and how my life unfolded. When I was, it's like about, let's see, 2010, I made a huge decision that I thought was like going to be a wahoo decision, like, oh my God, that's just going to be great. And I ended up going into what's called the dark night of the soul. And that's where nothing makes sense. There's no meaning. Things just fall apart. And life as I knew it was no longer the way that it was. And so I struggled in that for years. And it wasn't depression. It was not depression. This is a spiritual process. When we know these things about life, that there are these spiritual processes, these things called dark night of the soul, or spiritual. Sorry, the word's not coming. The word that does come is spiritual immersion process. When we know that this is part of life, then it makes it easier. So, for instance, I knew in 2010 when I started going down and into these processes, I knew enough about this that I could do more reading, do more reading and meditation and contemplation, and did a lot of journaling. I wrote a lot of books during that time to really share so much of my experience. One of those books is called Me, and capital Me stands for Miraculous Existence, and the title is Me: 101 Indispensable Insights I Didn't Get in Therapy. So these are all the spiritual elements, little tiny lessons. It's just one or two a page. But I did a lot of writing because that was the way could integrate. I was experiencing myself. I was having a human spiritual experience, and I needed to articulate that, document it for myself to integrate it. So that's another element of this, is being able to have a way to translate some of this stuff so that you can utilize it for yourself. So this is one thing that makes the spiritual journey easier, is to have a way to do that. Sometimes people join spiritual ashrams or churches or religions or all kinds of spiritual fellowships where they can share their beliefs and share their ideas and share their expression, and that's a good thing too. So having that for yourself is a really, really important element. But the point that I was making was that we sometimes think that this is going to be easy in and out. In 2010, when I was like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Good things are going to happen. It's going to come out of this. It's just going to be another couple of weeks. And it was like, no, it wasn't a couple of weeks. And someone said, oh, it's one of those birth things. It's 9 months. You'll be done in 9 months. It's like, no, it wasn't 9 months. And there was a lot of agony, and there was a lot of dark time, a lot of despondence, in a sense, like I was ready to die. Not that I was suicidal. And if I was suicidal, that's just something that's part of our human questioning. Do I want to leave the planet? Do I want to intentionally leave the planet? But I was certainly ready to go, and had some amazingly exquisite moments in those dark times. So when we think of dark times as another element that makes life easy, is if we think of dark times as something to resist, that makes a journey, and the idea, these steps, it makes it much more difficult than going, okay, dark night of the soul goes. It's what happens. Let's go. Let's get it in. Let's go in. Let's get happening there. And so that's a really important element as well. Is like, where do we resist? Where do we resist experiencing what is? Our brain says, no, it can't be that. Or if I do this, if I do all the shoulds on the should list, then I won't have to go through a dark night of the soul. It's like, okay, that might be true. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. You can talk to an astrologer, you can talk to a tarot reader or a hand reader, psychic, and they can tell you stuff, but that isn't necessarily the truth. Because and that's another subject. We can where we want to believe that we can control and focus, like, in a sense, saying, okay, here's my destiny. In fact, the destiny cards is another place where you can go and go, oh, here, it's all written out. But in decoding all of the either whether it's the hand reading or the tarot or the astrologer or the destiny cards or numerology, they can all point to. But we have to, again, come into direct experience with that. We can't just think our way through this human experience. Um, we have to be in direct experience and direct integration of it, of who am I? What am I? What am I doing here? How am I serving? Those are really important questions. Hi, Marge. I'm glad you're here. Um, so if you haven't yet, if I've said anything here that's of value, it would be great for you to give me a thumbs up. Um, I've been thinking about this. So I'm going to say it this way. Because I'm a YouTuber and I watch other people's YouTube channels, and I look at how many subscribers they have and how many viewers for a specific video. And then I look at the number of thumbs up they have, and it's probably not even 10% of thumbs up and of the viewers. And I just find that fascinating because most YouTubers are not getting paid for this. They're doing it because they love it and they're wanting to share information. And so they're doing it from their heart. They're doing it to share and be of service. And those of us who are watching, we go, yeah, 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 whatever. But if we value something that they're providing, even for 5 seconds, we go, that was valuable. Why not say yes and thank you with a thumbs up? It's just an interesting thought I'm sharing with you. If you don't want to do it, it's okay. But notice what shows up when people say like and subscribe. That part that says nope, when actually the people who are doing the YouTubers are providing a service and they're giving you something that you need. Why not just give them a thumbs up as a thank you for that? It's just a spiritual practice in a sense. What do you have to lose by not giving a thumbs up? What do 90% of those viewers lose by not doing a thumbs up? And what would they gain, or what would they be up against? What would they be in conflict with if they did a thumbs up? It takes less than a second, no money, no cost. How can we resist that? I just find it fascinating. One of those questions. Let's see. Another thing that really supports a spiritual journey being easy is the level of trust that you put into your own knowing. Now, most of us are taught that we have very little worth and we have no reason to trust ourselves. That's why we have priests. And that's why we have rabbis. And that's why we have sheikhs. That's why we have spiritual leaders. So because we don't know enough. In the AA tradition, they call it stinking thinking. And there's a point where we do have stinking thinking. You know, most of us do not do what we say we're going to do. We do not walk our talk. And I think it's important. It's 100% important to walk our talk. If you're not walking your talk, then what are you doing? What are you doing? So do you trust yourself enough to do what you say you want to do? Do you trust yourself enough to follow your own thoughts, your own truth? And if you don't, I want you to look at that. If you want to, I mean, if you're listening this far into this video, you're probably a little bit invested in having a better life. So, what keeps us from learning to cultivate a better sense of self-worth? And we know our self-worth by looking at around us and saying, look at that. Look at what I've given myself. Look what I don't have yet. Look what I don't give myself, as in healthy relationships, healthy bodies, healthy bank accounts, healthy job environment, health and well-being. If we're not giving ourselves health and well-being and being 100% responsible for not giving ourselves that health and well-being, what's that about? And I used to be one of those people that says, oh, self-worth, like too much emphasis on self-worth. But I really realize now that the cultivating what I've done is cultivate that self-worth, not directly by saying most of us have a very low sense of worth, but really going at it differently. But if we look at, wow, I am not giving myself what I say I want, and it's not because I'm not able to, because I'm giving myself what I don't want. If I'm giving myself what I don't want, why am I doing that? There's really interesting questions, and all of which points to I have the opportunity to take responsibility for what's showing up in my life 100%, as I started out with. So Marge says, I never got in therapy that dot dot dot. This moment only holds that I bring into it. This moment only holds what I bring into it. My perceptions are memories of the past. If they didn't serve in the past, they will not serve me in the present moment. Thanks, Marge. She got that, I think, from the book, what I didn't get in therapy. Um, we look at and hold on to, Marge says that was number 30 of the Me book. It is golden. Thank you, Marge. When we look at what we're holding on to, and this is another step, if you will, and what makes the spiritual journey easy is, what are we holding on to, and for what purpose? The last night I happened to watch Marie Kondo. Not happened to watch. I chose to watch Marie Kondo on Netflix, and partly because I love her energy. I love her sweet presence, and so I just wanted a hit of that. I wanted that presence, and that's what Netflix does for me a lot. Is it brings me into relationship with people that I'd love to be in the presence of, and so in these moments, it's Marie Kondo. And when she was talking to these people about what they're holding on to, they all got very clear about why they were holding on to what they were holding on to. And in letting those things go, what began to show up just by letting go of clothing or paper or books or sentimental items. But when they were able to let those things go, something else automatically came in. But there was a wisdom you could see over the point of the hour, which is, I think, for some people like 30 days, the shift or a maturity or a wisdom that entered into the picture. And they were able to let go of not only the clothing or the books, but they were letting go of something else that they weren't even aware that they were holding on to. And that's part of the spiritual journey. So the tidying up is just a delightful, we think of easy way as part of our spiritual journey, but it's just all as difficult. Any one of them is a difficult part of the journey. In this, what I watched last night, this guy was like, oh, I'm really good at this letting go business. He was talking at this point about clothing. But when it came to books, he struggled. He couldn't do it. And then his partner was like, papers. He was so attached to the papers. And it was interesting to watch, oh, they could let go of this, but they couldn't let go of that. And that's what it's like on these spiritual journeys. There's places where it's easy. And other places like, no, this is so hard. Like nobody wants to do that, the dark night of the soul element. Nobody wants to grieve. Nobody wants to be human. Nobody wants to be in the messiness. And yet we all came here to have this experience. So it's just fascinating when we look at ourselves and listen to ourselves. And much like Marge was saying, is my perceptions and my memories of the past, if they didn't serve them, then why hold on to them and take them forward into the next moment? We don't need to do that, but we choose to do that. We choose to do that. And when we begin to take 100% responsibility for those choices, now we're going to think differently rather than, well, my mom was like that, or these are my mom's things that I inherited. Now I'm responsible for that. It's like, you can be responsible for that, but do you want to wear it and be burdened by that? Or are you ready to let it go? That's your choice. You may have been burdened with the inheritance, but you have an opportunity to do something different. You can choose to do something different. Another element is the idea that I'm looking for the person that's going to tell me the right way to do it. to do this spiritual practice. I'm going to go study with Maharishi, and he's going to tell me how to do it. I'm going to go study with somebody else, and they're going to tell me how to do it. And that's not how it works. And it doesn't. It can begin there, but at some point we outgrow our teachers. If we're really smart and learn, we're going to outgrow our teachers. And I heard that, and I can't tell you who I heard that from, but every spiritual practice is meant to have you outgrow your teachers. And I think that's really wonderful. And what I provide for people, I want them to outgrow me. I want you to know who you are and grow yourself and expand yourself beyond what I'm teaching or what I'm experiencing and sharing. I want you to outgrow me. I want you to outgrow all your teachers. I have a new client. We'll call her Melissa, and she's ready to quit this ashram that she's part of, and she has to write this letter that's to her, to the spiritual leader there, and say, I'm leaving. And she doesn't yet understand that she's leaving because she's outgrown that person, that individual. And I think that's a beautiful moment when we can know that. And that happens in quite a few relationships. It happens in our marriages quite often, or our children outgrow their parents. That doesn't mean they stop loving them, but it may be that I need to change that kind of relationship with them because I've outgrown that and it's not fulfilling to me, and I'm not able to be fulfilling to them in the same way that we started out. That's another human, that's another hurdle, spiritual hurdle, is when we need to leave relationships that we don't want to leave or we shouldn't be leaving. They're hard, they're challenging because they go against what we've been taught. The consensus reality is you love your family, you spend Thanksgiving with them every year, even though they're abusive or that they are violent or that they are not serving and be in a loving, kind way. So we get challenged by that. Wait, you mean I have to, or I cannot go home? Yes, you cannot go home as a choice in terms of your well-being, your whole well-being. And that's a whole nother part of this process of self-worth and personal responsibility, is to say, how do I take care of myself? How do I be in integrity here and intentionally taking care of myself? It's a big question and all part of this spiritual journey. When we think of I think it was Lao Tzu who said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And and we take the first step and we go, holy crap, now there's another first step, and then there's another first step, and then there's another first step. And that quite often is how it feels in this process, in this practice, where we don't know from one moment to the next what to do or how it's supposed to feel or how it's supposed to be. This weekend, I had my second vaccination for the COVID shot, and so I was kind of laid out the next couple of days. So Friday, I got the shot, started going down. So all day Saturday, I was sleeping, and I had some, in a sense, profound spiritual awarenesses that nothing is more important than anything else. I mean, I've said that before, and I try to practice that. But here, all I needed to do was sleep. But there was a part of me that had been feeling guilty because I wasn't doing something else. But the truth was, the most important thing was what I was doing, which is resting. And I realized that if there's nothing else more important than what I'm doing now, then how do I function? This is one of those spiritual dilemmas. It's almost like a haiku. It's like nothing is more important than anything else. Nothing. We talked about this with the last one, where it's like what's in as career as a spiritual practice is the executive's job more important than the person that cleans the toilet? Truly, what is more important? And it's like nothing is more important than anything else. And so when we can let go of the priorities of hierarchy of this is more important and this person ranks higher than, then we're in this moment of, okay, what? Now what? And so my Saturday afternoon was in this state of it could have been bliss, and it's just like, wow, I'm totally free to do anything. But there was this dilemma, like if there's nothing more important to do, then what do I do? How do I be me in this moment? Like, how do I be me in this moment, this first step? And it took me a while to get some momentum, but it was only because I was on the couch and then it was like, oh, my dog Gracie needs a little bit of a trim. So we went outside and gave her a trim. And then it was like, oh, the flowers need watering. So I watered the flowers. And it was like things just led from one to another without me having to prioritize this was more important. So I say that in terms of sometimes we don't know what the next step is. All we can do is be in this step. The next step will come, and then the next step will come, and then the next comes. But it takes faith, as I was speaking about before, and trusting yourself and the divine connection that you have with something greater than yourself to be led and to know that that's there. Um, yeah, Marge was saying, yes, the Tidying Up with Marie Kondo is a great show. Lots of wisdom and lots of some of those shows I love to watch is how people be with their own dilemmas. I mean, that's one of the things I love about coaching is that I can be a witness for people in their dilemmas and say, how do you decide? How do you know what to do? What's the best? How do I do this for myself? And that's the big question. How do I do this for myself, for nobody else? And when I do that for me, I have greater capacity to do that for you. Um, so we can go through these. We just have a few minutes left. We can go through, I just looking through my notes, of these more ways of looking at how can we make this spiritual journey easier. And part of it is dismantling, like I said, all of those elements of that creates a lack of self-worth. And one of those things is dismantling shame. So dismantling shame and dismantling guilt. So quite often we have this level of unconscious guilt. We don't even know it's there. Because it's so impressed upon us, or we've been living with it so long, we don't even know it's there. So, like for instance, a number of years ago when they said eggs are bad for you, right? Okay. And now eggs aren't bad for you, but when I eat an egg, I still have that, I shouldn't eat that egg. That's a moment of guilt. Okay. Or I have a new vehicle and it uses more gas than my old car did. And there's some guilt about that. Okay. So all these elements, that's just two. I should vacuum more often. That's a three. So I can have a list of all of the ways that I become conscious of the guilt that I've been living with. And so to dismantle that guilt, to go, that doesn't make any sense to keep feeling guilty about eating eggs. If I'm going to eat eggs, eat eggs. Or if I'm going to eat cookies, eat cookies. Don't feel guilty about it, because what's the point of the guilt? What's the point of the guilt? There is no point to the guilt. There's no point to guilt, period. I'm telling you. If you can find a point to guilt, leave the comment. Tell me the point of guilt. I really want to know how that looks for you, and because maybe it'll change my mind. But I would love to see that and know that if there's something for you where guilt is a good thing, let me know. Because for most of us, it keeps us trapped in trapped and imprisoned, as opposed to free and emancipated in a state of ability to know ourselves fully and experience ourselves fully. And that's, I believe, one of the things that we're here to have, is just to have a great time, is to get to the place where it's fun and funny. I was talking again to another client the other day, and I was just her presence was so radiant, and I just grasped my heart. I just said, you're just you're breaking my heart. You're just so beautiful." And then I laughed, and she laughed, this wonderful laugh, because of the human moment that we had, that we shared. And it was just a laughter and joy that is so much more a part of my life than ever before. Uh, just because I don't have to be so entrapped in in that practice of staying small and limiting my expression of self. And that's what I want for you guys, for everyone, is that fulfillment of your human spirit, and the empowerment to make that so for yourself, to take on the responsibility, not as a burden. I think most of the time when I say that to people, you have to be 100% responsible for your own well-being. And we go, oh, and we feel burdened by that, as opposed to going, whoopee, I get to bring this into fulfillment. I get to bring this into well-being. I get to bring this into the fullest potentiality. Why would I go, oh, it's part because we have to start somewhere and we don't know where we want to start. And so we'd rather put it off, put it off. And then at some point we go, I wish I hadn't put it off. So that's just part of what we do. Is like, I wish I hadn't put it off. It's like, yep, I get it. But we do. The another piece that's important is the element that kind of plays into here is the element of forgiveness. And I've talked about this a little bit before, and we'll talk about this in a whole a live, I think, coming up next week. That in a lot of religions and spiritual practices, forgiveness is really important. And for me, forgiveness usually has a sense of righteousness. If I forgive you, if you did something, and I am at a point of going, yeah, you did something and you shouldn't have, but I forgive you, there's a righteousness here. And this person is still, in a sense, beholding to me because I have forgiven them. Okay. Not healthy, not healthy. So what I have to look at instead, it's like they're just being a human being, and if I like it, I'll stick around. If I like them, if it's not such a bad thing, I'll stick around. If it's a bad thing, maybe I have to leave, or maybe they have to leave. But otherwise, I have to look at why I'm holding on to unforgiveness. And when I can look at it that way, then I take responsibility for holding on to that. Why am I staying in this state of unforgiveness? It's like, oh, well, because I can hold it against them. I've got a weapon. Anytime that I'm feeling upset, I can go, remember that time? Okay, that's not forgiveness. And so if I really want to be free, if I really want to move on to my spiritual journey, then I want to engage in this exploration of why am I holding on to this unforgiveness? I have a lot of great reasons to hold on to that unforgiveness. How about you? Why do you want to hold on to that unforgiveness? We have it all over the place. Past relationships, or parents, or episodes in our life, or your science teacher or your football coach. Places where we're holding on to unforgiveness. You can call it resentment. You can call it what you want, but if you're holding on to it, it makes it difficult to move on with your spiritual journey. And that's the whole point of this conversation. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say. Oh, one of the other elements, it's like this is kind of a really great little 1 hour summary of a lot of what I've learned over the past 10 years, 11 years, 60 years-ish. And one of the things is the development to cultivating and expanding the tolerance for discomfort. And the reason that's important is we think that a spiritual journey wouldn't be uncomfortable. It's like especially if you're doing it right, there shouldn't be any discomfort. That's what we think. But the fact is that as we're growing and maturing, it's like growing pains. We have growing pains. And with those growing pains, it's uncomfortable. Or we're experiencing human emotions. We're experiencing energetic, vibrational stuff that's not working. We're experiencing cellular memory that's being released and purging. And anyone who's been on a detox program knows it's uncomfortable. So our ability to be with discomfort is really important in this process. And sometimes the spiritual elements can be you developing kriyas. Your body moves in weird ways, and vibrations happen, or there's pain from other elements of life that's happening. Elements of life in terms of a spiritual process, spiritual emergence. There's a spiritual emergence happening, and these things are happening. And when we know they're happening or know of them, then we're not so afraid of them, because the fear is like, well, there's something wrong. I have to go to the psychiatrist, or I have to go to the doctor's physical doctor, or somebody. And it's really good to have yourself checked out by your health practitioner or your therapist or whatever to say, hey, am I good? And they go, yep, you're good. Okay, great. Because I have these pains, or I have this thing that's happening. And they go, no, that's not. And you can know that that's part of the purging and the releasing that's happening as part of this spiritual journey. And it's just part of it. You can't not have that release of cellular memory. It's a density energetically that you're letting go of, like a detox. And when you know that, you go, oh, it's just that. And you might need to rest. You might need to sleep. You might need to slow back, cut back on work hours or something like that, because this may become a priority. And you might go, oh, I don't want it to be a priority. It's like, okay, then you just slow down. You just slow down, take it the journey at your pace. There is no hurry. That's the I think the final thing is there's no finish line and there's no hurry. People, and a lot of times people will say, I'm supposed to be I should be farther along than I want, that I want to be further along, or I should be further along. And it's like, yeah, I get that. I have had that experience, that thought too, is, I wish I was further along, but it's like there's no other there's no place to go. Wherever you go, there you are, and that's where you are. And the part that says, I want to be further along, it's like, yes, and you also have a job and a family, and you are taking on too much, and you're also dealing with too much energetic stuff happening. So we have to take this at a pace that it works for you and the realities of your life. So you can look at this from a wisdom place as well, wisdom and maturity, to say you'd like it to go faster, but that means more discomfort. And you don't want that. And so you take it to the pace that you can. And that's a really important thing to know. It's like, this is the pace I can do. Whatever you don't finish this lifetime, there'll be more. That's all there is. It's just an ongoing, eternal growing and expanding and becoming more joyous and radiant every lifetime from here on. And isn't that great? So you don't have to get it all done this life. Here's the book. Just read this book and you will have all the answers. Doesn't exist, because you got to walk the talk and you got to learn. And every single step of the way, you might learn one lesson and it leads you to the next. And that's always the surprise. We never know what the next one is going to be. So we're getting close to the end. We just have about a minute left. Any last comments? Any big takeaways for those of you who are watching? Thank you for your thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Any more thoughts or ideas? I'll check my notes to see if there's any one last thing I want to say. I think, well, the last thing I would say is that patience is part of the process, right? There's nowhere to go, nothing to do sometimes, and the degree of patience that it takes, the time it takes, and you'll be growing and changing all along the way, in very, very positive, good ways. That's all you need to know. Just the practice of patience is part of this as well. All right. Well, thank you guys for being here. It's been a joy for me, and I'll look forward to seeing you again next week. All right. Bye for now.